नाराए फारूकी व सहाबा।
The riwayat of Bukhari Sharif, the righteous people will pass away one after the other, and then only the worthless people will remain like the leftover of barley and dates, and Allah will not care about them. The poet says कि जब इस बज़म से उठ जाएंगे दोस्त अक्सर और उठते ही चले जा रहे हैं बराबर, फिर और उठते ही चले जा रहे हैं बराबर, जब हर वक्त पेशा नजर है ये मंजर, यहाँ फिर तेरा दिल बहता है क्यों कर, जगह जी लगाने की दुनिया नहीं है, ये इबरत की जा है तमाशा नहीं है. When you see everyone leaving the world one by one, you see the beloved ones returning to Allah, then why is it that your heart is still stuck in this dunya and you are not preparing for the hereafter? Somebody asked the likes of Mufti Mahmud al-Hasan Sahib rahmatullah alayh, कि Hazrat, the scholars of today are not like the scholars of yesterday. So Maulana replied, it's not only the scholars, balki the men of today are not like the men of yesterday. The women of today are not like the women of yesterday. The mujahids of today are not like the mujahids of yesterday. The God-fearing of today are not like the God-fearing of yesterday. And then he went on to say, value the scholars of today, for a time will come you will not even find scholars like this anymore. Do their qadr today, for tomorrow a time will come you will wish you had truly valued the scholars that you had in your presence. Many of you may know and many of you may not know, but like the Urdu poet says, majhuluna fil ard wa ma'rufuna fis sama. There are some people who are not known on earth, but every angel knows of them by name in the heavens. Every angel in the heaven talks of them. Every angel in the heaven remembers them. On the 4th of May, this ummah became a yatim. This ummah became an orphan. On the passing away of Hazrat Maulana Gulam Mohammad Vastanvi Sahib rahmatullah alayh, Mawtul alimi Mawtul alam. The death of an alim is like the death of an entire nation. एक आलिम की मौत गोया कि कुल आलम की मौत है. Hazrat rahmatullah alayh was given the title Khadimul Quran, Khadimul Madaris wal Masajid, the server of Quran, the Khadim of Madaris al Masajid. I mean, his own ustads would boast over him. His ustad Maulana Abdullah rahmatullah alayh would say, if Allah is to ask me tomorrow, oh Abdullah, what have you bought in my presence? What do you have to offer? What do you have to present? Then I will bring the likes of Maulana Gulam forward and say, Allah, this is what I have to offer. This is what I have to present. On one occasion, his Ustad Sheikh Zakaria rahmatullah alayh mentioned to his students, that whenever Gulam speaks, whenever Maulana Gulam speaks, then listen to what he says and make note of what he says. When asked why, he replied by saying, Maulana doesn't get time to do mutala. He doesn't get time to open books because he's too busy looking after his madaris and masajids. But when he speaks, it's as though it's ilham from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is inspiring him to say that which the ummah needs to hear. So when he speaks, make note of it, for surely those words will benefit you one day down the line. Maulana was born in June, the 1st of June 1950, and he passed away on the 5th of May 2025. He was roughly 75 years of age. It is mentioned about him that when he was born, his father lived near a masjid. And at that time there was a Jamaat that had come to the masjid. And in that Jamaat there was a Wali individual by the name of Munshi Allah Ditta rahmatullah alayh. It is written that when the father of Maulana Gulam came to the masjid, Munshi Allah Ditta told the father of Maulana Gulam, I can see such noor upon the birth of your child. I make dua to Allah that one day He spreads that nur across the dunya. And did He spread the nur, my brother, across the dunya or what? His father, rahmatullah alayhi, was a farmer. He lived a simple life like every farmer does. But his connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was such that for 45 years of his life, he never missed a Hajjud Salah. For 50 years of his life, he never missed a Kabiri Ula. And when he would converse with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would converse in such a manner like a child cries before his mother, he would cry before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he would beg and weep before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maulana Gulam Sahib says himself, I have never seen anyone cry before Allah like I have seen my father rahmatullah alayhi cry before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah, when you have fathers like this, then you produce children like Maulana Gulam. In 1970, he got back to the likes of Hazrat Sheikh Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi, and he served him for many years. He would do the khidmat of Sheikh Yunus Jaunpuri rahmatullah alayhi, who he studied Bukhari Sharif from. He says himself that I tried to get close to Sheikh Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi to do his khidmat. But many a times the students would turn me away because of my young age. So he says I began to do the khidmat of Nazim Sahib. Nazim Sahib was the Khalifa of the likes of Hazrat Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanvi rahmatullah alayhi, and he was the principal of Mazahir al-Ulum. He says, I got to do the khidmat of Nazim Sahib. And one day whilst doing his khidmat, he said to me, "Oh Gulam, who have you taken baits with?" So I said to him, I have taken it with Hazrat Sheikh rahmatullah, with Hazrat Sheikh. So he said to me, then why don't you go to his khidmat? So I said, every time I try to get close, people turn me away. So I can barely get to see him, let alone do his khidmat. So this Nazim Sahib, rahmatullah alayhi, he called one of his students and he wrote a letter. And upon the letter he wrote, Maulana Gulam is like my own son. From tomorrow he will come and he will do your malish. And then he told the student of his, take this young boy, meaning Maulana Gulam, and take this letter to Sheikh Zakaria. When this letter was presented before Sheikh Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi, he said, I'm not really in the habit of taking massages, but if this is the request of Maulana Nazim Sahib, then I have no option. And then he looked at Maulana Gulam as a child and he said, Abhi Londe, kal se aa jana, or meri massage, you can do my massage from tomorrow. Maulana Gulam says himself, many a times I would go and then we many students in front of Sheikh Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi, and I would come and I would begin to massage his head, and there would be great personalities in front of me, the likes of Maulana Abdul Rahim Mutala Sahib and Hazrat Maulana Yusuf Mutala Sahib himself would be sitting there, and I would be massaging the head of Sheikh Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi. He mentioned on one occasion, Sheikh Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi very casually just mentioned there was a certain type of fruit in Jalalabad, and Maulana Zakaria really liked this fruit. And he says there was some old Haji Sahib who would bring this fruit for me, but I think he's passed away, that in a long time he hasn't come. So Maulana Gulam heard this and he told one of his satis, go to Jalalabad and bring me that fruit. So the individual went, he brought the fruit back and he gave it to Maulana Gulam. The next day was Friday. After Jummah, Maulana Gulam Sahib, he presented this fruit in front of Hazrat Sheikh Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi. And he said, Hazrat, this was the fruit that you were speaking of yesterday, and you really wanted it, so I got somebody to go and get it for you. So Sheikh Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi looked at him, and he looked at him for a while. Maulana Gulam Sahib rahmatullah alayhi says, he looked at me for such a long time, it felt like minutes. And then he said, Abhi Londe, Dil ki murad puri kar di. You have really fulfilled my desire. You've really made me happy. Maulana Gulam Sahib says, the manner in which he looked at me, मुझे यकीन हो गया कि हजरत की तवज्जो मेरे ऊपर होगी, I was certain in those few seconds that he looked at me, that he must have given me some du'as, that because of that I am what I am today. Because of that I am what I am today. In 1979, Maulana Gulam Rahmatullah established his Jamia Ishatul Ulum Aqal Quwa. When he was asked, Hazrat, how did this Jamia come into being? He said, I was invited to Aqal Quwa to go and give a lecture in Ramadan. When I went there, I seen that there were people very away from the deen, and they were getting even further away from the deen. So I said to the locals that there should be a madrasa here, there should be some masjid, that people can be connected to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I said to them, find me a small hut or something, and I myself will begin to teach. So they found him a small little hut. And Hazrat Maulana Gulam Sahib, he found an ustad, and he found 6 students. And this is how the madrasa started. And then Hazrat had to go back to his hometown, as he was an ustad over there. But still he had this worry and fikr, how is Islam going to spread in Aqal Quwa? How the people going to stay on their deen? And with this worry and fikr, he left his hometown and he migrated to Aqal Quwa. And over there, him and his wife, they lived in a small hut. And by day, he would teach in this small hut. And over the years, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used him for the khidmat of deen to such an extent that people began to come from far and wide all over India, from all over India. It so happened he then introduced with his deen education, he also introduced secular education. And this was unheard of in India. India was a place either you go towards your deen fully or you go towards the dunya. But for him it was a such that he wanted his students to also have the dunya. And Allah utilized him to such an extent. And my brother, if you go to this place today, to this Jamia, there are over 15,000 students studying in this Jamia. It started off with 6 and 1 ustad, and now there are over 15,000 students studying there. And he didn't stop there, but Allah utilized him in such a way that he went on to open up a nursery, a primary, a secondary school, and then he went to open up a college wherein pharmacy was taught. He went on to open a medicine college wherein also IT and software development was taught. And his worry and fikr was that our students should not only have the deen, but they should also have the dunya. And he would always say, कि देने वाला हाथ बेहतर है लेने वाले हाथ से. And he would say to his students, कि I never want you to be the ones who receive zakat. Rather, I want you to be the ones who give zakat. And this is why I want you to become the best in your dunya as well. He would say, maqsad, asal maqsad to akhirat hai. Maqsad to deen hai. But for this dunya to survive, you need to have a bit of knowledge of the dunya and excel in terms of the dunya as well. One of his students, who now is an imam in Masjid Zakaria in Bolton, he says, I had the opportunity to serve Maulana Gulam for a long period of time. He said, I would every morning make his breakfast. And what was his breakfast? A cup of tea and 1 boiled egg. Allah, this was the way our Qabirin lived. How simple they were. He said, after making his breakfast, I went to the masjid to offer some salah. Because as I got to the masjid, I could hear someone crying very profusely like a child. And when I went forward to see who it was, then it was none other than Maulana Gulam Sahib himself. And he was weeping profusely, and he was weeping like a child weeps. And at that time he was only young, newly made a mudarris. There was barely any hair upon his face, he barely had a beard. And when I went forward to hear what he was saying, there was only one thing upon his lips. Ki Allah, mujhe deen ka gulam bana le. Allah, mujhe deen ki khidmat ke liye istemal kar le. Allah, mujhe deen ka nokar bana le. Allah, utilize me for your deen. Allah, use me for the khidmat of deen. I mean, which youngster today, my brother, after newly leaving and graduating from his madrasa has his worry and fikr? Every youngster just wants to go and explore the dunya for what he's missed out on. But yet his worry and fikr was, I need to be utilized for the deen. The student says, I stood there for hours on end waiting. But Hazrat's dua didn't come to an end. And I got bored of waiting, so I just left. In his Jamia, my brothers, there will be competitions as to who can become a Hafiz of Quran the quickest. There was one student who became a Hafiz of the entire Quran in 100 days. His Ustad says you read one quarter juz daily. And his tongue would only flow with Quran. He would say at times we would give him a biscuit and say, "Ki eat it." And he would place it in his pocket. And the next day the very youngster would come and I would see the biscuit in his pocket. And I would say to him, "Kere mere pyare, kya aapne khaya nahi?" And he would reply by saying, "Ustad, ye waqt nahi mila khane ka." I didn't get the time to eat. Allah, he was producing such huffaz whose hunger and thirst was not quenched by food or water. Their hunger and thirst was quenched by Quran. Their hunger and thirst was quenched by the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fikr tujhko dunya subh wa sham hai, ghaflat usi cheez se jo asal kaam hai. Kuch din sahle mushakkat deen ki, are Musalman phir to bas aram hi aram hai. Maulana Gulam went on to become such an individual. His own Ustad Sheikh Zulfikar would say, Allah has taken such work of deen from you that Allah hasn't even taken away from the kings of the dunya. Allah has taken such work of deen from you, a ghulam, somebody who was nothing in terms of the dunya, that Allah hasn't taken such work from the kings of the world. What work of deen did my Allah take from me, my brothers? That Maulana Gulam established 128 Darul Ulooms, 2,221 Makatib, and he was under his guidance. 7,000 masajid were opened up all over India. This was not the work of a Jamaat. This was the work of one man who had a desire to help the ummah of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam excel. This was the work of one man. And if you are to add up all his students in all his makatib, in all his madaris, and in all his institutes, then the total number of students, my brothers, comes to 142,414 students. This was a man who had a worry and fikr that I need to be used for the deen of Allah. And he carried on begging, he carried on pleading, and he carried on asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, until the time came my Allah responded in such a manner, until my Allah responded like no other. He had a worry and fikr, and this is the way my Allah responded, my brothers. This is the way my Allah responded. He had such a worry and such a fikr. On one occasion he says, I want you to open up a medical college, and the cost was 2 crore, but I didn't have the money. But I needed this. Why? To help the ummah of Rasulullah. So he says, he said, I found a person. And I said to him, look, this is what I need. The cost is 2 crore. You start the work and when the money comes, I will give it to you. So it so happened the person said, okay Hazrat, I'll start the work. The work was near completion. Hazrat still didn't have the money. And the individual needed the money. And this is the way Allah takes care of His people. Okay, one person was passing by and he says to the worker, he says, okay, did Maulana Gulam instruct you to build this place? He says, yes. He said, what's the cost of it? He says, the cost is 2 crore. Has Maulana Gulam paid you? He says, no. He says, well, come to me tomorrow and I will give you the full amount. Do not go to Maulana Gulam and ask him. His worry and fikr, my brother. Do you know, if a person wants to be used for deen, but he doesn't have the luxuries of the world, Allah will bring the people who have the luxuries of the world to his feet, and they will give from the wealth that Allah has given them, and the work of deen will continue. Monthly, my brothers, the cost for washing the clothes of the students in the Jamia was over 2,000 pounds monthly. And he would say to the students, we do not want you to wash your own clothes or iron your own clothes. Why? Because this will take out time from your studying. You should only give your time to your studies, to the Quran and Hadith of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and the responsibility of washing your clothes and ironing your clothes and delivering your clothes to you will be upon this Gulam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maulana Gulam was such that Allah would call him very often to his house. Somebody asked Maulana Gulam, ki Hazrat, where do you get the money to go? He would respond by saying, कि हम तो फ़कीर लोग हैं, ना हमारा कोई कारोबार है, लेकिन बरों से सुना है कि जो कुरान से मोहब्बत करता है वो अल्लाह का प्यारा बन जाता है, और जो अल्लाह का प्यारा है अल्लाह उसको अपने घर बार बार बुला देते हैं. I have heard from our elders, the one who connects himself to Quran becomes Allah's beloved. So I connected myself to Quran, and Allah carried on calling me to his house again and again. Maulana Hazrat Ghulam Sahib, he suffered from diabetes. It was something that was in the family. On the day of his demise, his son Maulana Huzaifah Sahib says, कि we were all around him reciting Quran. Even at that time, he looked, even at that moment, in the crucial stages of his life, he just looked to hear Quran. He says, we began to recite Quran. I was reciting the last verse of Surah Ali Imran, and as I was reciting, as I got to the end and as I concluded, he says, the doctor next to me nudged me and he said, the soul of your father has departed from this dunya. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He says, my father didn't even blink, and nor did he even twitch. In such a smooth manner, his soul had departed from this dunya that we didn't even realize. One Mashaykh, he says, I seen a dream in which the heavens had opened up, and an army from the heavens was coming, an army of angels clad in white clothing, and they had white imami or turbans upon their head. And I was saying to myself, where is this group of angels going? Where are they going, and why are they descending in such large numbers? He says, when I woke up and I looked at my phone, I seen the news that Maulana Ghulam Sahib has left this dunya, and then I understood where these angels were going. No, the work that he did was work that people knew of. Maulana Huzaifah Sahib says, only after his demise did we realize what work he did behind closed doors. When people came to us from far and wide all over India, and they said, your father bought me a house, your father opened up a madrasa in our area, your father sponsored a well and gave us a well, we were in need of a masjid, your father opened up a masjid for us, I really wanted to go for Umrah, your father paid for my Umrah, my parents had passed away, there were so many debts, your father paid for their debts. Allah, my brother, it makes you remember the likes of Imam Zainul Abidin, he would go around carrying bags of atta upon his shoulders, and he would deliver these bags of atta at the houses of the yatim and the widows. And nobody knew who it was delivering these bags of flour. The only day they realized was the day he passed away, when over 100 family went hungry that night. Then they realized who it was. This was the work he did behind closed doors. Baini wa bain Allah, that was between him and his Lord alone. My brothers, when you leave this dunya, then this is the way you want to go. Whilst you are alive, people speak good about you. And even after you leave this dunya, people can only speak good about you. Ye kafan, ye kabar, ye janaze, rasm-e shariat hai e Bilal. मर तो आदमी तब जाता है जब उसे याद करने वाला कोई ना हो. बेलिबास आए थे इस दुनिया में ए बिलाल, बेलिबास आए थे इस दुनिया में ए बिलाल, एक कफन के लिए इतना ही सफर कर गए. You came new to this world with no clothes. All the lying, the cheating, the backbiting, the slandering, the arrogance, the pride and the haughtiness for what? For 2 pieces of cloth with no pockets, with no sleeves, with no color? Is this the reason you disobeyed your Rabb? Is this the reason you neglected your Nabi? Is this the reason you turned away from Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Leave this dunya, my brother, in a way where people can only speak good about you. दुनिया ऐसा छोड़ के जाओ कि आसमान भी रोए, ज़मीन भी रोए कि कि कहाँ अल्लाह का दोस्त चला गया, अल्लाह का यार कहाँ चला गया. Leave this world in a way, my brothers, people can only say good about you. Mufti Azam, Mufti Taqi Usmani Hafizahullah is saying कि मुझे मौलाना गुलाम की इंतकाल पर इंतहाई दुख है, इंतहाई दुख है. That we have lost such an individual, we have lost such a personality. Read the lives of your Qabirin, read the lives of your elders and come to understand the difficulties they gave for this deen. ये खुशियाँ, ये जिंदगी, ये लज्जतों का सुरूर, अमल हयातु दुनिया इल्ला मताउल गुरूर, कि जिसके सामने सब बराबर है अमीर व फकीर, कि जिसके सामने सब बराबर है अमीर व फकीर. हस्बुनल्लाहु व निअमल वकील. और हर जानदार का होना है एक दिन कुव्वते मौत, हर जानदार का होना है एक दिन कुव्वते मौत. कुल्लु नफ्सिन ज़ाइक़तुल मौत. और ख़त्म हुआ दुनिया को पाने का जुनून, ख़त्म हुआ दुनिया को पाने का जुनून. इन्ना लिल्लाहि व इन्ना इलैहि राजिऊन. May Allah give me tawfiq. May Allah give me tawfiq.